Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this very exciting session with Deena Chochinov. First of all, I want to acknowledge that I am speaking to you from the traditional territories of the Squamish Nation. I'm Pamela Martin. I'm on the Engagement Committee, and welcome to the International Women's Forum Lunch and Learn. You're welcome to eat lunch during this session. But we are going to be hearing today from Deena Chochinov and all about her new book called Homework: How to Be a Leader in the Boardroom and the Living Room. So what does it take to be a leader today? Do you have to be tough or likable or both? Are you a different leader in the home than you are in the boardroom? Those are some of the kinds of questions that we're going to hear answered today, I think, from Deena. The book, I've been told, is transformative, that Deena helped steer many businesses through the pandemic, and it's a very powerful book with the potential to change lives. So we are very excited to have with us as the moderator, IWF member, Mary O'Callaghan. So I do want to give you a couple of housekeeping details first, though. Please keep your video and audio off during this session until the Q&A section. Deena will be taking questions after she speaks, so please be thinking about something that you would like to ask her, and please, by all means, reach out, ask your question. The best way to do that is to write it in the chat box. Also, you could raise your hand if you want Mary to call on you, but probably easiest to write your question in the chat box. For the best experience, you can set your view, which is in the upper right-hand corner, to speaker view. And you should know this event will be recorded and it will be available on our members only section of our website after today. So, on to our moderator. Mary O'Callaghan has been a member of IWF for 9 years. She is chair of the Communications Committee and she serves on the board of directors. She retired in 2015 as a partner with KPMG's management consulting practice. Currently, she has her own consulting firm where she provides organizational development and strategic planning services for not-for-profit entities, as well as working as a family enterprise advisor. Mary also serves as chair of the board of the College of Occupational Therapists of BC. As well, she's on the board of Applied Science Technologists and Technicians of BC. Very busy. So please welcome our moderator, Mary O'Callaghan.
Oh, thank you, Pamela, for that kind start. Thank you all of us, everybody, for joining us today. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce my good friend Deena, she's a therapist, a management consultant, a family enterprise advisor, and now a published author. In her various roles, Deena works with executives and senior teams, focusing on leadership coaching, talent management, and organization development. She also assists business families to learn the tools and techniques to make smart decisions both for their families and their businesses. And in her role as a registered clinical counselor, Deena works with individuals, couples, and families. I've known Deena for a long time, and a couple of years ago, she told me she was going to write a book to bring together some of her stories from working with leaders and families. This evolved into a book about leaders who think they need to be different people in the boardroom and at home, which is exhausting. So her book really focuses on the skills needed to be the same person in both places and to be successful. Hence the title, Homework. It's an easy read and the stories are definitely compelling. Deena's a very compassionate and caring person. Quick story for you. When I joined KPMG a long while ago, Deena was already a member of the group that I was joining. And about 2 weeks before I was to start, she called me. And yes, we used telephones back then to do this. It was a long time ago. She called me to ask what wording I would like to have on my business cards so that they would be waiting for me on arrival. I mean, I thought this was such a lovely gesture, and it just typifies Deena. She's always thinking of others. She has a strong string of impressive academic qualifications that you can find on her website or in her book. And I'm delighted that she's taken the time to be with us today. Thank you, Deena. So first of all, why did you write this book? It's a major investment of time, effort. And so can you please tell us why you did it?
Sure. Thanks, Mary, for having me. I'm really glad to be here with you and your wonderful women. I listen for a living. You gave a bunch of different titles of the different hats that I wear. And my job is really, no matter what I'm doing, is to pay 100% of my attention to my clients. And I think that, it's really a courageous act for people, whether they're in the therapy consulting room or in the business room or in the family enterprise space, to share what it is that's going on for them as leaders. It's a really, really hard job. And so I've been thinking about, how do I take the different parts of my work life and describe them into a whole career? And I have been thinking about how lucky I've been for the past 30 years to learn from my clients in these 3 different areas. And then I thought, a couple of years ago, I turned 60. First of all, I had to get over the shock of that and calm down from that. And then once I did, I thought, okay, so what? So what? What am I going to do with these 30 years of experience as a practitioner? What can I share about what my clients have taught me and what I've been able to do to support them to have healthy, more resilient lives? And I thought about the systems that I've been working in. So I know that you've talked about the therapy, the consulting, and the family enterprise advising. What I want to say to the group is, all 3 of those areas of work are based on systems theory. So when I'm in an interview with one individual person, I think about the system that they come from. When I'm working in an organization to me is a collection of people who are in a system relating to each other in functional and sometimes dysfunctional ways that are going through a change. And what can I do to make interventions so that the system stays healthy and the people in it also do? And then when I think about my role as a family enterprise advisor, that really is an unparalleled example of where the dynamic systems of home and work, business and family come together. And it's really emotional and strategic and aspirational and very complex. And so I'm thinking about, how do I share what I've learned as a systems thinker in those 3 domains? And this thing happened, we were in a pandemic, and I thought, okay, I'll write a book. And some people made, lots of sourdough recipes, and I made a book. And I thought it was time for me to share what my incredible clients over these years have taught me and what we were able to experience together.
Okay, thanks for that. So what you've learned from your years wearing these 3 hats, and being a family enterprise advisor, what are the key things you wanted to share in this book?
Well, it's sort of micro and macro. So what I learned is that what I do at the micro level in the consulting counseling space has a significant overlap with what I do at the macro level, which is sort of organizational and family business. I think of myself as, helping small struggling families, and then sometimes organizationally helping large struggling families. And I learned that there are many not so hidden connections between leadership in the boardroom and leadership in the living room. And so the qualities and the actions that my counseling clients take, maybe even unwittingly, resemble what the leaders and executives of the businesses that I consult to, how they help their work lives become more successful as leaders. And it really challenged these old notions that I had of this dichotomous split or a separation between who we are at work and who we are at home. And I saw a quote once. It was, "The God I worship is nuance and complexity." And I think that what's so important is that my understanding of these leadership worlds has a much more nuanced understanding of the overlaps and alignments between the different social systems that we work in. And, you know, I've worked with a lot of different people, and we are, I think, socially trained to split ourselves between, you know, who we are at work and who we are at home. And I think this distinct dual identity ethos is really psychologically and emotionally unhealthy for us. And I think that we need to be more whole and integrated, because when we're in these separate identities, it doesn't serve us. In fact, I think it derails our ability to be gifted and skillful and integrated and whole and present leaders. And I've seen too many folks who have this separation of selves philosophy. And what it does is, I've learned over the years that it's led to internal chaos, and it's sort of like we're broken into pieces, and that's not healthy for us. Home versus work, and this kind of paradigm of either or thinking, you know, we're good here, we're bad there, we're right here, we're wrong there, is very restrictive and disconnecting for us as humans. And I've sort of shifted my paradigm based on working with leaders in these different domains to something that I call, you know, both and, so that we can be congruent and we can be integrated, even though our lives can feel sometimes pretty messy and textured and complex, and I think very beautiful. So I've learned that there are so many challenges that we have in our work and our home lives that are essentially quite similar. And I talk about the overlaps and crossovers in my book through the stories that I tell that my clients have shared with me. The stories are composites of 30 years of experience, so I don't give anything away. But it's so interesting that over the years, so many of the stories that the leaders have told me around their roles as presidents or partners or parents have lots of common threads.
Yeah, no, that comes through very clearly in the book for sure. I found it really interesting that you structured the book so that you have two parts. The first one describes kind of the 8 qualities of leadership, and that's, you know, sort of background, I guess, or foundational. And then it delves into what leaders actually do. So why did you structure it that way? And which, by the way, I think makes it a very approachable piece of work.
Oh, thank you for that. I wanted it to be approachable. And I also know that leaders are very busy people. And a lot of people don't read. They skim, they scan, they scroll. And so what could I do to give, no matter where you open the book, somebody could read something and take something repeatable, usable, and hopefully effective with them. So I started thinking about how did I want to organize it. And I wanted to do something that was more like a roadmap or a user's guide for anyone in a leadership position. I think that we're all leaders, depending on what we do and how we do it. And I wanted to start with the how of leadership. So it's not just about what you do, it's how you show up. And I called these the qualities. These are like patterns of behavior of successful leaders that I have noticed in the last 30 years. So this is sort of a qualitative research study that I didn't even know I was doing, but I did over all this time. And I wanted to, like, I didn't Google leadership qualities and then choose my top 8. I really dug deep into all the stories that I've been told. And out of that came 8 qualities that really represent the behaviors and the values that people show up with as the most successful leaders. I also want to say that I know what bad leadership looks like too. I've had some very bad leaders that I've worked for in my life, and some incredible ones, exquisite ones, but I didn't want to focus on the negative. I really wanted to focus on what were the qualities that were most enhanced by the leaders that I saw that were the most successful. And so go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think you accomplished that, because one of the things you just said was that you wanted people to be able to open the book any place and find something that they could just, find a small droplet of something that meant something to them just by the title that they were looking at. And I think you definitely succeeded in that.
Thank you. I wanted to really offer a way, not just a description of the quality, but practices that people could use, could take to cultivate each of the qualities.
Right.
So that was the first piece.
Yep.
Part. And the second part was I call the what of leadership. So the how and then the what. So these are the actions, the things that people do to guide the members of their system, whether it's being, again, a president of a company or a parent of children or a partner in a relationship. And these recurring themes came from my clients' experience. Over and over again, I noticed, okay, so if you're going to be successful, you have to do this, and then you do that. And I wrote them down. There happened to be 8. It's not that I chose 8. It just sort of came out of this qualitative reflection over all the years. And then for each action, for each what of leadership, each lesson, I wrote case studies that highlight the crossovers between the home story and the work story, always through a systemic lens of leadership, where we can really bring our whole selves to the party, so that regardless of what system we're in, we show up as whole. And then at the end of each lesson, I offer the reader some homework. So you don't have to do it, but it's a takeaway so that repeatable, user-friendly practices that everybody can use, can take away and do if they feel like it at the end of each chapter.
So just speaking of the qualities and then the lessons, could you sort of share with us 1 or 2 of the leadership qualities that you've identified as essential, and then maybe tell us about a lesson that you think is good and is important for us to know?
Sure. Well, I thought maybe I'd talk a little bit about compassion. Compassion, the way I see it, is empathy in action. There's a lot of research to show that when we are overloaded on empathy, it actually can generate the pain centers in our central nervous system. So we don't want to overload empathy because it can bring us down. It can make us so sad, really. So the way I see it, and what leaders that I've worked with have taught me, is they take their empathy and they turn it into compassion by asking a very simple question, which is, what can I do? And what that does is that actually activates the pleasure centers in our nervous systems, regulates us, and allows us to take action and be well with the other person. We can do something for someone, even if we don't have the answer of what that could be. Just asking the question is a really great regulating mechanism. And a lot of the leaders that I've known offer a compassionate ear and really know how to show up for someone. Now, with women leaders, a lot of what I do with them is help them have compassion for themselves, because they're so external facing and so socially competent to take care of others, that a lot of times I say, so what are you doing to take care of yourself? What are you doing to show yourself the same compassion that you show to others? So I think compassion is a really important quality. And I think resilience matters more than all of them, which is why I always start with resilience. And if we have time, I'll do a little exercise on helping people become more resilient, so that we can respond rather than react to the situations that we're in, and that we stay healthy and well, and that we are nourished in our leadership and not spending too much time on the depletion end of the continuum. So those are 2, I think, very important qualities.
Thank you. And thank you for emphasizing compassion, because my little story on that is, when I read the book and I got through the description of compassion, and I read what you've just quoted, that the leaders ask, how can I help? it prompted me to call you right away and ask how I could help you, because you were dealing with your aging parents and it was a challenging time for you. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. So are you able to share a lesson with us that would kind of complement both of those or one of those?
Sure. Well, I did write a lesson particularly around a very successful executive leader who's a woman.
Mhm.
And it's from the lesson called Relationships, Nurture and Inspire the Best in Everyone. So of all the leaders in the 30 years, I really have found that the best ones have an exquisite relational intelligence. These are the skills around relational intelligence, emotional intelligence, some people use that term, are often referred to as the soft skills. But I think the soft skills are the hardest to deliver. And these are the kinds of leaders that build meaningful connections with everyone in all their social systems, and they rouse other people to learn and grow, and they inspire people, they recognize people, they pay attention to people, and they make them feel that they, no matter what's going on in the rest of their lives, when they're with you, you matter. And they show up. They show up for their employees and for their kids, for their partners, for their parents, for everybody. And so that is I think that all of you here as leaders in your own lives are in the relationship business. And regardless of the technical pieces of the work that you do, that if you don't have the relational skill, you can't do anything well. And so I write a case study of a woman who I've worked with many of these women, and sort of my favorite client group to work with, who is a very successful executive that lives in a highly compartmentalized way. And it's led to a series of dysfunctional and dysregulated actions and some damaged relationships with her family and her team members because she wasn't integrated or whole. And that's because she was raised at a time where she had to show up in a certain way that is more stereotypically considered male in terms of the attributes and the traits of leadership, and felt that she needed to control that and be that way in order to stay successful, and slowly over time became more alienated from her true and more softer self. And in the case study, I talk about her process of trying to have a more examined life, which actually translated into a calmer, more regulated, fuller, and healthier life, and how she was able to find that integration of authenticity so she could show up as herself, regardless of whether she was at work or at home. And so that's an example of a lesson that my clients have taught me over all these decades of what really matters and what you need to do to be effective and successful as a leader.
That was a very compelling example, I can tell you. When you just started to speak about it, I thought, oh, I remember that one very distinctly. So no, it's a very good one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Personal accountability and interrogation are a theme throughout the book. This type of personal work can be very scary, even if you don't admit it's scary. Mm-hmm. So when do leaders typically reach out to you? Is it often in a time of crisis? And then how do you begin to work with them?
Yeah. Well, I sort of have this joke that my phone doesn't ring unless somebody's in trouble. I mean, it would be great if it rang when somebody is feeling totally great, or a system, a family business was going well, or an organization, was smooth and managing change effectively. But normally that's not what happens. Like there's a glitch, people are going along their lives and then they hit a wall and they need somebody to help them get over the wall so that they can move on. Listen, to be frank, when people call me and they ask for help in their leadership, I think that they're very courageous, because it takes a lot of vulnerability to talk about what's going wrong. It's really great to talk about what's going right all the time, but when you hit a wall, you need some self-compassion, and it's an act of courage, and I take that really, really seriously. The first thing that I do is I let the leader know that they're not alone. that they have lots of company, and this is the kind of problem that exists all the time, and that they don't need to worry that it's only them and it's only their fault and their problem. And then I help them regulate their nervous systems. And one of the ways to do that is to be in relationship with them, to be engaged with them. And what that does, it's called co-regulation, where everybody starts to calm down. I do this work for them for sure, but I also do this work for me because it allows me to be regulated as we stay in co-regulation together. And then I help people realize that incremental steps are better and more lasting than any drastic changes that they're about to make. And so the process of working with a family business, or working in a leadership team, or working in a couple who are having problems or parenting issues, that everything needs to be done gradually and incrementally as a process of change for it to be lasting and effective. And yeah, it's really important that I give them the safety and the security they need to take ownership of what's going on for them.
Okay, so start small and grow it with them and bring them along the way. It's not just, it's not an instant fix, that's for sure.
No.
You mentioned earlier about offering the reader a series of homework exercises. Can you tell us why you did that and a little bit more about them?
I think it's important to offer something to the reader. I want to share, and I want to give little gifts along the way to anybody who would take the time to buy my book and read it. And I think that there are very practical, useful tools that everybody can take away one at a time and start doing as soon as they finish reading the chapter. And so I like that kind of learning myself. I like to practice. So I offered all these different lessons and homework practice sessions, if you will, taking the ideas that I wrote about in each chapter and then saying, try this or try that. And the feedback I've received is that people do it and they're interested enough because it's not complex. They don't need to like wear certain clothes or do certain things. All they have to do is ask a certain kind of question or consider a tool that I've offered that can actually be of use to them in their lives as leaders.
Okay, thank you. So you end the book with a message about accountability, which is just so critical in every part of our lives. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how it relates to women leaders?
Right. Well, this is an invitation to all women leaders. I want to offer them a way to self-reflect on what they do and how they behave. Let me just be clear. Most of my clients over the years who have sought my help and my support have been women leaders. That doesn't mean I've never worked with men. I'm just saying that in my experience, I've worked with more women who say, I want some help, I want some guidance in my family, in my marriage, in my leadership, in my team. And so I was really thinking about them as a wonderful audience. I think all the women that I've worked with are pushed and pulled in 100 different directions. So what I've noticed is that high functioning leaders quickly become over functioning leaders. And that's not healthy. And I think that, you know, most of the women identified leaders that I've worked with have the two hardest jobs in the world. And the first is parenting children, and the second is leading a team. And then add on to that elder care, you know, being a manager, being a friend, being a volunteer on all these boards and all these committees, being a mentor, being a crisis manager. I mean, the list is endless. And I think it's very important for women to create boundaries that they need to be healthy, resilient, and effective. So I think of this book as a roadmap for consideration and interrogation, and perhaps an invitation to take on more accountability for how you want to show up in your lives using some of the tools and techniques that I share throughout. So leadership really is about making choices. But if we're always being pushed off our center by all the people who want something from us, then we end up letting others make those choices for us. And that leads to our sense of personal accountability eroding more and more over time. And then the question we're left with is, who's in charge of my life anyway?
Yeah.
And I'm not a fan of that. I want all my clients to be able to have clear and healthy boundaries, so that they know what they're doing, when they're doing it, and they feel whole and integrated no matter what. And as leaders, I end with a reminder that this leadership journey is an ongoing process. And I give people an indication saying, you don't have to do every exercise or use every tool or technique, but choose the ones that sparked your curiosity or actually made you nervous. Where you read something, you went, oh, I'm moving in that direction. I want to stop that. I want to figure out how to create a healthier boundary. And for everyone to believe and to be reminded that you are in the relationship business. But if you're not taking care of yourself, it's going to be very difficult to nurture and nourish your relationships with others.
Yeah, which is what it's all about. Absolutely. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We talked about doing an interactive exercise as part of this session. And were you okay to lead us through that a little bit now? And then we can open it up for questions from our participants, if that's okay.
Sure. I just wanted to leave you with some ideas of how to figure out what nourishes you and what depletes you. Okay. So I take a piece of paper and I put a line down the middle, or a line down the middle of my screen. And on one end, I write down what situations, tasks, or relationships drain my energy. Think about things that you are doing by force, or things you are doing that remove your personal choice, that are contrary to your values, like what you believe in, that you don't have support around. So start thinking about those and write them down. I mean, you don't have to do it all in one sitting, but what are the situations, tasks, or relationships that drain you? And then on the other side of the paper or the screen, what are the situations, tasks, and relationships that fill you up with energy, that really nourish you? Things that you do that you have control over and autonomy, and that are resource rich, and that are in line with your values and your ethics, and conditions that just support your well-being. And what you're looking for is an 85-15% split. It's not 50-50. You don't want half and half. What we're looking for is like 85% of your list is in the resilience, nourishment side of the continuum. And if you're having trouble with that, think about, most people don't have 85%. They have too many on the depletion side. And so there are three things that you can do. I'll give you some examples. So the first is you can remove something from the depletion list. I mean, you can't remove your mother-in-law. You just can't. I mean, if you don't love your mother-in-law. But if you are really overextended and you're in a book club and you hate the book club, I was in a book club. I hated the book club. I felt like it was a chore, not a pleasure. And you know what? I just quit the book club and nobody died. It was fine. Or you have too many volunteer roles, or you're cooking every single meal, or you're answering every single phone call from your team member. So what can you remove from that list that will give you more nourishment? So that's the first thing. The second is what can you transform or change? Can you transform your schedule so that you have 10 minutes between every meeting, time to breathe, take a sip of water, walk up and down the stairs? And what do you have to learn how to accept? Like your kid's career choice. It's not yours, but it's theirs. Or your role as an organizer in chief, because you're just so damn good at it. What can you accept and be accepting in a loving way towards yourself? And I think that can help women move their nourishment to a higher percentage by changing removing and accepting certain things on the depletion side. So that's something for you to all to take away if you're interested. It's a really interesting thing to get it down on paper and see those things written in black and white or on a screen, because we don't spend enough time taking care of how to nourish ourselves and create boundaries to allow that to happen.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. So we have a question here. Any tips in the book or now for people facing retirement? This person says, in my case, I'm a serial failed retiree about to face it again in 2023, and I intend to excel at retirement this time.
Oh,
This person isn't a serial failed anything, by the way.
I'm sure, of course not, because none of you are, but we put ourselves in that category. My question is, my response is probably different, which is, why do you want to retire? I mean, if you like doing so many things, you don't have to fail at retiring. You could just excel at doing all kinds of interesting things that might or might not be paid.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And I think so. So the response to you from my thesis is, what do you need to feel whole and integrated, regardless of what your title is?
Mm-hmm.
And do that, because life is short, and we want to sort of make the most of it. And I think that the labels don't matter. What do you want to do to give yourself that whole and integrated perspective, whether you're a president, a partner, a parent, a retiree, whatever it is?
Yeah. Just be sure to do it. Well, that's interesting. Thank you. So I don't think we have any other questions. Should we just open it up and ask people to put on their screens again, and then we can have other questions come in? Would that be okay? Just to kind of have a bit of a conversation?
Sure.
So if I could ask everybody to put on their screens. Pamela, I'm probably stealing your role here. So,
No.
Oh, no. And ask people to just put their audio and video back on, and let's chat for a few minutes. So does anybody have any questions or thoughts for Deena, or any comments that you'd like to make? Val?
Just comment. Thank you. That was wonderful. Great tips. And I love the co-regulation. And of course, I do a lot of work with the autonomic nervous system, but just simply put, you sort of just said that term, and I thought it might be nice for our audience to know the autonomic nervous system is your stress response, and we make a lot of cortisol and adrenaline, and that's what makes a lot of people sick, is when you have excessive and prolonged exposure to cortisol and adrenaline. So co-regulation and having healthy relationship is actually good for your hormones, your stress hormones. So thanks for pointing that out.
Well, and also, as Deena just said, so taking away those things that deplete you and adding to that pile of things that make you feel whole and good about yourself and everything else. Yeah, no, for sure. Thank you for that, Val.
Thanks, Val. The supplement cortisol manager is always on my bedside table, because I can get wound up like anybody else. But what happens for me, which is so interesting around the work I've chosen to do, is that my co-regulation with my clients helps me manage my stress. And I think that when we're in a leadership position, there's so many relationships that you're managing. If you can be really present in those relationships, your stress levels go down.
That's right.
Something for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That's for sure. Pamela?
Okay, I just wanted to ask you, Deena, who did you write the book for? Like, you say that the people that come to you usually are people suffering from something. They're usually in trouble or they have a problem. So who should buy the book? Just the people who are suffering and need help, or, is it for everyone?
Well, I mean, I think that everyone who seeks my kinds of service around family enterprise advising or consulting or counseling, or have a need to fill, there's something that needs to change for them to excel in their leadership. So this is for anybody who considers themselves a leader at home or at work. And I just don't know anyone who doesn't have challenges in their leadership.
Mhm.
I think some people are more naturally inclined, but I also think there's a lot of skills and qualities that people can learn and cultivate to be even better at what they do. And so, yeah, I think anybody that's interested in supporting themselves in their leadership roles.
Yeah, so even if you don't feel like you're suffering from anything, you can learn something from the book.
Yes, I'm hoping that not everybody's in sufferance all the time. But I do think that every leader that I've worked with has a question about what needs to happen to fine tune or finesse or cultivate more of themselves in the leadership world. And so, yeah, I think that I think this is an offering for them.
Yeah, concur entirely. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Barb? You're on mute, Barb. Thank you.
Classic. When I think back on the things that deplete me, the commute, like I don't miss that from COVID, but on the flip side, I hate Zoom. So it's sort of like I'm torn. Like I want to go into the office, but I don't want to be sitting in traffic. I'm so much more productive at home, but I miss being around the team. So I kind of go back and forth all the time. Like I'm driving in some days and I think, oh, why am I doing this? But then when I get to the office, my cup fills up because I'm around people.
Right. So I think you have to make choices all the time about what nourishes you, what depletes you, and what are you willing to put up with to get something back. I am definitely not a commuter, but I know that when somebody says, do you want to, can you come downtown for a meeting? I am so excited to go to a meeting and be in the same room as other human beings and dress up. I can't tell you, I'm so excited about that because it fills me up. So Barb, my hunch is when you need that fullness, when you need that jolt, you're going to get in your car and deal with the commute.
And Barb, you've got a long commute. I remember you saying one day, it was sort of just as COVID was starting to taper down a bit, you said someone had called you and what they said was, well, would you like to actually come in for a meeting? And you were like, what? A face-to-face meeting? I will be there right away. I mean, it did. So I certainly understand what you're saying and your point of view for sure.
Yeah.
COVID has been really interesting for people who are more extroverted styled, preferred, and more introverted preferred. And what most people are comfortable with is a hybrid of both. But I do know that one of the best ways of co-regulation is to be in community with other people. So it also depends on how depressed you are. Like if you want to be with other folks, it will actually improve your as Val said, it will improve your ability to cope.
Yeah. Physically and mentally.
Yeah. It's a personal decision, but anybody who wants to invite me for a meeting, I'm in.
As long as it's face-to-face.
Face-to-face.
Yeah.
Deena, do you think, you said most of your clients were women, do you think men are thinking about the same kinds of issues, like their leadership style at home versus at work?
No.
Or should they? I don't even.
Well, listen, maybe they are. And I know some that are, but in my 30 years of practice, that's not the general direction of where they're going. But the best leaders I've met who are men understand that they're in the relationship business. And because of that, they're willing to go into those places of self-reflection and to help their team go into reflection of what is it that's getting in our way of becoming as effective as possible. I mean, it's such a stereotype, but there's a reason why it's a stereotype. Because the qualities of collaboration, presence, discernment, compassion are considered more feminine, but that doesn't mean men don't have them. They just sometimes need an experience to say, whoa, what's getting in my way here?
Absolutely. Well, I was thinking also, especially if you are a high profile, like a politician or something, I mean, they tend to want to be tough, whereas women want to be likable.
That's right. Well, the socio-emotional versus the task relationship, and that gender difference. I'm hoping that will change. I've seen it change in the last 10 years for sure. And I've worked with some extraordinary male leaders who are very, very focused on all the qualities that I outline in my book. But it's challenging, and there's not enough time, and people are pushed in a million different directions, and they have so much responsibility that they don't take time to reflect on what matters most for them to cultivate. And so that's sort of where I come in.
Andrea.
Deena, thank you. That was excellent, inspiring. I've got, my company's 12 years old. We're a legacy company of the games in Vancouver. And I've been feeding 25 miles every 2 weeks. And I love it. I'm passionate. COVID hit and we're in the events business. So we were just rocked to the ground. One company was rocked, the other did okay. Now, and I feel like I'm a fairly good leader, and I inspire, motivate, and do my best, and I'm passionate. Where I'm really challenged these days is these young kids that we want to hire, and they want they want a higher salary, and I find myself being reactive, which is not me, whether, of course, it's a reflection of COVID and we're coming out the other end of this black, dark tunnel that we've been through, and we will get through. But the attitude of some young people, and I'm old school, I'm the first to admit it, but I really, maybe tips, I need to guard myself about overreacting to my senior leadership team when they say, well, we got to give them a raise, or, and I lose my shit. I don't lose, that's wrong. I've become more impatient, which I'm not proud of. But I'm tired of feeding 25 miles and getting complained.
Yeah.
I have so much to say about this, and we don't have time, but the one thing I can leave you with is, that these are triggers for you. And so before you go into the meeting, I'm going to give you a breathing technique that works like magic. You breathe 3 in through the nose and 6 out through the mouth. And it's called, it's stress breathing. And what it does is it actually can regulate your nervous system. So 3 in, 6 out. You want to really extend the exhale. Just by doing this, you're saying, I know that I get triggered. I'm not going to let myself get triggered. I'm going to calm myself down before I even have this meeting. And then the other thing that I want to say, whether you have the money to give them raises or not, with this, really, the younger generation is more, I'm going to use this word, I'm politically incorrect, I'm sort of very entitled. What you can understand in terms of what does work is the nature of the engagement and the relationships between you and your staff. That relationship is the most important one. And a lot of people will forsake some increase in salary for purpose and meaning and relationship. And if they're not going to, and there is no more money, then they're not the right person for you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deena. I think we might, Kelsey, sorry.
Hi, sorry, thanks. I just wanted to ask one question. Might not be your area of expertise, but given the amount of leaders you've worked with, talking about relationships, a little bit off what Andrea said, now that we're in this hybrid world, like, who have you seen, or what techniques have you seen that have been the best at developing relationships in and out of the office? Because, if you're used to working in the office, which most of us were before, it felt like those spontaneous walk-bys or however was how you checked in with your team. And it somewhat feels forced to just call up. So who have you seen really execute well in this environment at maintaining relationships when some of your staff don't want to come in at all?
Yeah.
But you want to develop.
So even if it feels forced, the only way to do this is to communicate. And so I know folks who are calling people on the phone. They're not doing it by Slack. They're not doing it by text message. They're calling everybody that works for them on an ongoing basis just to chit chat and check in and say what's working, what's not working, how can I be of service? They're having little quick stand-up meetings early in the day, even if it's on a screen, and everybody shows up and they ask them things like, what's your wish for today? What are you grateful for today? That might have something or something not to do with work. The only answer is communication be as creative, as fun as you want it to be. But again, if you're not connecting, and if you're not communicating, you're not connecting. And connection equals engagement. And I know that it can feel forced, but I would rather that managers, leaders of teams, feel uncomfortable and then get used to just checking in rather than not doing it at all. Remember that when people don't know what's going on, they make up lots of crazy stories in their heads. And so when you know that something's happening in your industry or something's happening in the company, people need to hear about it. And the average, people need to hear something 5 times before they actually believe that it's true. So you tell them face to face, you tell them on a screen, you write them an email, you send them a notice, you text them, any ways that you can to let them know with different communication vehicles what's going on. They will feel like they matter because you're taking the time and the energy to let them know what is happening. And that means that they won't create stories in their head. If I got paid for the amount of stories I've written in my head, the screenplays that have been so off, I would be a bazillionaire. Because people do that. That's how we respond. And then when we're over empathizers, we really create the crazy stories around, oh my God, what if this? And how about that? And I did this and I was wrong and all that kind of stuff. And so I think that communication it's critical, especially because of the hybrid workplace.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Deena. Thank you so much, Deena, for spending your time with us today. You've given us so much food for thought about leadership at home and at work, and how we as women leaders can feel whole in both places as one person. So I'll turn it back over to Pamela now to just close us out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Deena. Thanks everybody for coming. And by the way, as you know, in our chat box, I think we still do have information on how to get the book. If you would like to get it, it's called Homework, Deena Chochinov. And if you can't find it, you just go to her website or go to amazon.ca. You can order it. And if you would like to see a recording of this discussion, it'll be on our website shortly. So in the members only section. So thanks everybody for coming. It's been really an inspirational lunch hour. And Deena, we can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much, everyone. It's been my pleasure. Really. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.